Mr. Mancini,
Present and accounted for.
Mr.
Here.
Goldstein,
Here.
Mr. Cantor,
Here.
and Mr. Schulman.
Here.
6 members.
Okay. First item of business is Washington Prime, 1 North Water Street Ironworks. The request for modification, approval of the site plan. We heard this at our last meeting, and we virtually approved it, but we did want them to have a continuing conversation with Steve, and I'd ask Steve what was the result of that conversation? Where does he feel it currently stands?
Yes, I believe that Mr. Moss is here. If I can pull him into the, there he is. Hi, Rob. You're unmuted now, so I think you can talk.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, great, good. It's a new computer, so it's a good sign. Thanks for having me again. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, would you like, I don't have his plan ready, but if you, would you like me to try to find it in email and then pull it up, or just?
If
Go
you
through.
think you can get it quickly enough, I think we just asked Mr. Moss for an update on where things stand,
Sure.
whether he has all the necessary approvals from the health department and the other city departments involved.
Sure, I'd be happy to. A lot's happened in a week, believe it or not. You know, I not only sit on the Independent Restaurant Council with a bunch of people nationally, but work with the Restaurant Association of Connecticut, and the governor has decided to go to that phase 3 on October 8th, which just means we're going in the right direction, which we're really pleased about. It allows us to go from 25 people to 100 people inside at one given party, and from 100 people to 150 people outside. And it takes it from a capacity of 50 to 75% inside, as long as there's still those 6-foot distancing parameters put in place, which we have. So that's all positive news. I have spoken with, back and forth with Steve, and Steve has the stamped engineering drawings now. So we did get those to him as well. Obviously redevelopment has approved it. I was able to sit with our electricians and talk about ventilation. We are going to be having our heated system in there, which my electrician will be doing, just not only to keep it warm for everybody, but to increase circulation inside and ventilation, as the health department, that was their one request. So we're all good on that front. Now it's just a matter of, getting the bill.
Is once you have the enclosure up?
Yep.
Will that space be integrated in the existing indoor space, or will it be a separate space?
Well, it's interesting because at the state level, talking with congressmen and the senators and the restaurant association, the people that I know there, all the way up to the governor, they really haven't even made a determination. They do know that right now they're looking at it as that would be integrated and become an indoor space, which, is fine with us and meets all the parameters that we have. Right now, our capacity outside plus the inside there, at the 75% level, which will be October 8th, is well past what we would need to make it work. So we don't run into any issues there. If the space was smaller, or we were trying to put a lot more tables or something like that, then that would be an issue. But we're actually not even going to change our floor plan, even on the inside on October 8th. We're going to leave it at 50% capacity as opposed to going to 75. I just was actually doing an interview in the Hour today. I don't know if anybody saw that. I guess it was 2 days ago it came out, or yesterday, but just about that, how we find that we want to continue to have diners feel safe. We feel with the floor plan we have and the tables outside, if we can keep it this way, there's no need to try to cram more people in. So we're well within the parameters of what they're setting, if you consider everything indoor. Sorry for the long roundabout
Oh,
answer.
that's okay. Let me just in the interest of full disclosure to the public, let me ask you to do one more thing. I see, excuse me, that we have 32 people here as participants, and I suspect they're not here for this item. Nonetheless, could you just briefly describe what it is you're doing, just so the audience knows?
Yeah, sure. So actually what you see right now on the screen is you know, the awning that would be in place in warmer months. And then Steve, if you don't mind, can you scroll just down to the I think it's the third page maybe. Well, yeah, this one right here. So essentially this is what would go up. You can see that the lining and everything and the technology that's put in place is called WeatherTech. It's a fully, you know, kind of soundproof, heatproof, not soundproof, excuse me, heatproof, weather insulated fabric that's used with kind of a plexiglass style window. We do have emergency exits for egress and everything that need to be put into place with regards to the building department and fire department and all that. So we're good. We're good with all that. So we're essentially just enclosing this area. And then within the underbelly of the canopy, we're going to be doing heaters as well as heat blowers that circulates air. Right where that door is in the middle to the left of that tree, that's an emergency door. Thanks very much. The window right behind that is those two doors are going to be open, as well as down towards the right side where the tree is on the right. That also circulates air from the restaurant outside through our air ducts as well. It's probably overkill, but again, we want to make sure we're doing everything right and that that, you know, Deanna and everybody at the health department is satisfied. So.
Okay, and just to be perfectly clear, this is all being done on your property.
That's
None
correct.
of this is intruding out into city property.
That's correct. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I
please.
just wanted to, just when you're done, I'll ask you one question.
Yeah, just to answer quickly, that yes, this is our property. The sidewalk that extends out to the right there is right where the edge of that barrier is. That's our property line actually. So it still leaves enough egress and everything that's mandated by the city of Norwalk and, you know, was approved when we built the building. So
My question is, how much better is the ventilation in the new outside space than it is inside? Or is it pretty much the same?
well,
just increasing the floor area.
it's definitely at least the same. It's probably better because we're sparing no expense to get two big units that they're really, each one's meant for 6,000 square feet of space. So you know, it's probably overkill, but I'd much rather, if I'm going to spend the money that we're spending here, which is coming out to be about $80,000, it's better to have it put in and then have to, you know, redo it again or something like that. So.
And what's the degree differential? So say it's a, you know, let's say it's a 45, 50 degree day. What's the temperature is going to be in the heated tent?
The heated tent should be the same temperature roughly that the indoors is.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially this technology that New Haven awning has, that's called WeatherTech, has insulation in between. So the idea is that, you know, it would keep temperature in there very well, where, you know, we would have the heaters on, we will have the system going on in and, you know, inside the building as well as inside the awning here, but that really you shouldn't feel the difference between the inside and outside, even if it's a 20-degree day outside.
Okay. And then how long does it take you to, once approval comes through, how long is it going to take you to actually put this all together?
So Dan from New Haven Awning had said, again, he's coming down actually tomorrow, and he's going to be he's going to be here with his fabricator. But ideally, this is only going to take about 2 days to do. The first day, they're going to come in and just make sure the framework is done. And then the second day, they're going to just be laying over all the awning and canopy. And then the final day, I guess it would be 3 days, if I count my electrician coming in,
Right.
just run all the conduits and hook the heaters up. So,
Yep.
so pretty quick.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're hoping, we're hoping because it's starting to get cold out here.
Right.
I mean, today's probably our last nice day, to be honest. Tomorrow and the weekend is going to be, 60 degrees as is high and down in the low or the high 40s.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing that. I talked to a bunch of restaurateurs today, whether it's, George over at El Posto or Matt at Match or even Richie Ball at Donovan's. And,
Sure.
our reservations for this weekend are very light. We're going to start to feel it this weekend. So starting this weekend. So
Steve? Steve?
Yep.
I know we had a discussion, I know the last time, and this was partly about this application, but about whether the state, and I realize the state's phasing in phase 3, about guidelines so that Washington Prime is the only restaurant the other restaurants can take measures and be able to do this in a more expedited fashion. Obviously, this is an unusual application that that they have the resources, but B, that they've been able to interact with all of the government agencies and people who need to, secure approval and so on and so forth. I guess, Steve, my question is kind of resuming from where we were last time, like, are there guidelines? Are there rules here? Where is the state on all of this?
I think Rob's probably more plugged in on where the state is than I am with some of this. I can tell you that we have had inquiries from 2 other operators looking to do something similar to this, where it's more of a permanent fixture versus, the temporary tents that we're seeing in other places. So
Right.
we've expedited those permits when they come in, and we'll help them. The other conversation I haven't gotten firm answers on the city side yet is for all the businesses on Washington Street where, the city put out the barriers to technically move the sidewalk into the street. And if they
Right.
want to put a similar barrier, or a similar awning type structure over the sidewalk, is Public Works going to be okay with those barriers being up all winter? That conversation hasn't been finalized or occurred yet.
When does that conversation need to happen? I mean, I guess from
Pretty
a
soon.
timeline perspective, yeah. I mean, I would think. I mean,
yeah, Josh,
I
I have
can't-
to say, it's a huge thing. And when I was coming on this call, I did talk to the other restaurant guys, and they're kind of, we do all work together. The nice thing about Sono is that we're all friends down here. We all want to see,
yeah,
high tide raises all boats here, and for the city too. But I think that's the question they're wondering too. I mean, it's unique because we have our own land here where the awnings are going, and I know Ollie O'Neill has his own land, and I know
yeah,
BJ or Bankhouse has theirs. But for the people who don't, who desperately need some sort of fix here, where they can put something, whether it be a tent like this with walls on it, on that sidewalk and keep that barrier, that is something that everybody is searching for. And we've been trying to talk to the mayor and talk to everybody about it. Because as you said, it's getting cold and everybody's looking for an answer, and nobody wants to do anything we're not supposed to do.
right.
So, yeah.
Right, Rob. I mean, my question is, and the one thing I don't want you to run into an issue with is you go to all this expense, you put all this together, and then, I think when we talked about this last time, the concern was about like the State Department of Health saying that, looking at it and saying, this isn't right for XYZ reason. I guess my question is, what assurances can you and other restaurateurs and other business owners get, and what does the state need to do, right. To
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree.
to give you that collateral, essentially, to give you that security so you can do what you need to do to stay open.
Yeah, I think that from a state level, from what I've heard and from what's coming out of the governors, is that doing this indoor with the tents, they've already kind of, I shouldn't say kind of, but it's gray area again. I wish it was more clear, but that this is going to be not only accepted now, but definitely down the road won't be an issue.
Right.
They're already talking. I mean, for example, right now it's approved in the state of Connecticut that if you have a country club or you're planning a wedding or something like that, you can have enclosed tents and enclosures
Yeah.
already. So the difference between that and what we're doing here is actually no different. And they weren't even asking them to do ventilation or anything. So we don't foresee, and from what I'm hearing from all of our advocates and the people lobbying, down in Washington for us, that this is not going to be an issue where I think the biggest issue for restaurateurs is going to be dealing with the city and the sidewalk and it not being their land on Washington Street, versus whether or not, indoor outdoor is really an issue going into the winter. I think it seems like they've pretty much made up their mind that it's not, that you can actually put these tents up and put siding
Yeah.
on. So
Okay.
yeah. So,
Any other questions from the commission?
I mean, I realize I've spent a lot of time here, but the only thing I'm thinking about, Steve, is, if that's where if Rob's diagnosis of the problem is correct, and that I'm saying problem, but just this issue, that this is about sort of the mayor and, making sure that like Public Works is on board. And I assume if the Common Council needs to step in and, basically give them the legal authorization to, keep the sidewalks the way they are. I guess my question is, from this commission's perspective, like what can we do to, expeditiously, hasten this project, process in a responsible way, but as quickly as possible?
Well, I mean, outside of myself advocating, I suppose, the chairman can send an email to the mayor outlining the commission's concerns and requests, and, then he can forward those conversations on to the appropriate parties to make sure that the conversation happens and then an action's taken.
My sense, Josh, here is that what we can do that would be most helpful is essentially what we've done here.
Yeah.
And that is to move quickly to get our questions answered so we can take early action to approve these things. And I think that's what we've done in this case.
Luke, sorry.
After we've taken our action, if you wish, we can continue to discuss whether it's the desire of the members of the commission to do anything more. But the first thing I'd like to do is get a motion on approval of this action. And
Motion.
so Josh has moved for approval. Is there a second?
Oh,
Frank is seconding. Let's do a roll call.
Sure. Ms. Wells?
I'm for it.
I'm sorry. I've gone out of order. I should ask if there are any questions on the motion. There appear not to be. Okay, I apologize, Caitlin.
I vote yes.
Okay. Mr. Goldstein?
Yes.
Mr. Mancini?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon?
Yes.
And Mr. Schulman?
Yes. So it's
believe
approved
that's everybody.
unanimously.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We really do. And again, if there's anything I can do, feel free. If you guys need some sort of a middle person between the restaurant core down here and the committee or whatever, or questions. I mean, going back to March, I've been on the phone with any and everybody, trying to deal with PPP money and guidelines and the governorship and anything. So, and Sean Duffy, who runs the Connecticut Restaurant Association, is a very dear friend of mine. So I keep in touch with him every day. And he's talking directly with the governor's office every day. So anything I can do, I'd be happy to help. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Josh, do you want to continue this conversation?
I mean, the only question I have, and this is just partly has to do with wondering the tools that we have in our toolbox. I mean, the overarching concern, and I don't know if people share this concern other than me, is that Rob is, an unusual applicant in that he has the access he has, and that he has the resources in large part to put a lot of this together very quickly. My concern is for a lot of other restaurateurs and small businesses who perhaps want to, do take these measures in terms of, tents and setting up things for the colder months, but who may not have the time or the resources to do the kind of investigation Rob's done. And so I'm wondering if there are sort of standardized guidelines or things, either our commission or the city of Norwalk can do to make it easier for them. And so part of this is I just don't know what tools are in our toolbox and what we can do. And so I don't know if that's worthy of a discussion or if I'm just sort of spitballing here.
One of the things that made this easy for us is the fact that this is all on his own property.
Yes.
Dealing with most of the restaurants on Washington Street, it seems to me, is far more complex because we're
Yes.
talking about city property.
Yeah, but then.
So I can't see us moving nearly as quickly on any of those others as we've been able to do here.
Lou, isn't the issue if it's on city property, simply can Public Works manage the snow removal and manage the other
Yes.
actions they need to manage? And if they say, yes, they can, then the fact that it's on public property shouldn't be a big problem for us. So the question is, if we think this is in general a very good thing for us to move quickly on and help facilitate, the question then is, what does Public Works say? Because we can't approve it and then have Public Works say they can't plow, and once there's snow, cars won't be able to get through it all. It's not going to work from the Public Works point of view. So that seems to me to be the only question.
I also don't know if there's Galen, I don't know if there's also a broader legal question about, restaurateurs or other business owners, putting something like a tent on city property, and if there needs to be some sort of essentially consent from the city to use that property for their businesses. Obviously, when you're expanding the sidewalk, that's something that had to be approved. I don't know if a similar kind of legal approval structure needs to be put in place, but I don't think that's something that that's really under like the commission's jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's the city attorney.
Yeah.
Has to
Right.
make it clear that it's a temporary, it's not a permanent easement. For the
Right.
for until the
Right,
end
of course.
it's limited, and the
Yeah.
city attorney, I'm sure, has a model for how to do this kind of.
That's already permitted.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
I was gonna just say that too, just from the restaurant standpoint. So they've approved this. I mean, essentially what we think as restaurateurs down there, what they really need down here for the Washington Street people is they need the city to extend the time frame. I mean, they've already approved the sidewalk, they've already approved the tents on the sidewalk. They just essentially need to say, okay, instead of it going till whenever the date is, we're going to keep everything in place. And I think, Mrs. Wells, you were right. It's about snow removal and that kind of stuff that's going to come into play. If that's all good, then the only other thing they'll need is just saying, okay, you can put sides on your tents. That's it.
Well, the only other items, though, there are a couple other concerns that I think the city would have. One is the type of structures that would be placed down would probably be a different, right now you just have a lot of pop-up awnings, which are not, they're easy to put up and take down. Do they need to affix anything to the sidewalk? Because I don't know what the Public Works would say about that. And then if you start having the heaters on the sidewalk, then there might be, the city might require a little bit more in terms of liability coverage for the city's end in case there's any kind of incident. But none of those things are insurmountable, but just
None of them are zoning
the
issues,
conversation needs to happen.
and none of those
Right.
are zoning issues.
Right. Right.
But it goes back to the first thing I said, and that is that what we can do best to expedite this is move them forward once they have the necessary city approvals.
Yeah, all we
And
can say is.
I think we've shown that we can do that. We can do that.
Yeah. I
we can
completely
say
agree.
From our point of view, it's okay. Now, that doesn't say it's okay for Public Works, doesn't say it's okay from the legal department, that's not our shtick.
Right.
All right, I think we ought to move on to the next item. We've got what I think is going to be a lengthy agenda. We have two, I think, substantial developments that we're going to be discussing. We can have an opportunity to come back to this issue if we have some time at the end of the meeting or at our next meeting, if you think it's appropriate. But with that,
Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you again. And if you need anything, please feel free to reach out. Thank you again.
thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
For those who haven't looked on the city website, we've altered the agenda because of the two larger developments. We have moved 5-13 CAM 280 Wilson Avenue, which is a request for an extension of CAM approval for construction up to the top of review and actions to new applications, because we think this is going to be a quick one. So Attorney Blank, you want to fill us in? As I recall from our previous meeting, we were a little bit concerned that most of the commissioners had not been involved in the original approval of this project. And since we've been pushing it forward for the past, I think it's 5 or 6 years, we just wanted to hear what the project is.
Sure. So thank you, Adam Blank of Wasley, Rosen, Queskin, and Kuryansky for the applicant, Bruce Byfield. And I also do appreciate you moving me a little higher up on the agenda. So Bruce is the owner of 280 Wilson Avenue. He got the CAM approval back in 2013. I was not involved representing him in that initial approval, although I was on the zoning commission at that time. So I do remember this application when it came through the commission. It's for a single family house. Primarily the property is it's about 1.6 acres, almost entirely in the industrial 1 zone, although a portion of it is in the AAA resident zone. And it's, if I can I share my screen? Is that all right?
Sure.
So this is what would be the driveway here to where the house would be located here. So this is the industrial 1 zone. And then this is actually about a 7-acre nature preserve that I believe the land trust owns. The property actually has really nice views of Long Island Sound that you can't see from this photo. So if I can I want to take just a minute just telling what the project is, and then I'll give you a minute about why it's not built yet. So the project itself, it's a 3,300 square foot single family house, no adverse impacts on coastal resources. As part of the development, they've removed, I think, 10,000 square feet of asphalt that was on the site where water was draining directly into the sound. And they got some permits to regrade the site. With the driveway that will be put in is gravel. And they'll put in all sort of indigenous plant materials to complement the natural habitat just, I guess, south of us. And there will be some updating of the plans to make sure that the home that would be built will comply with the current building regulations and FEMA regulations. Since it was approved, there is now sewer services run to the site, water and electricity are all brought into the site. And Bruce, who I think many of you, if not all of you, should know, is he's an architect based in South Norwalk, who's done many of the more prominent buildings in the city he designed, and he'd like to make this carbon net zero home as a demonstration home, which is kind of neat. And we do have, this is sort of it's the only image I've got, but a rendering of what the house would look like, a kind of funky, modern or contemporary house that's a nice transition from the industrial zone into a residential. And this actually is another aerial that shows where the driveway would be and the house here on the property. So Bruce acquired this property shortly before 2013, and bought it to build his primary residence, to live here. He got CAM approval in 2013, and then before he actually pulled the permit to start work on the site, he heard of a property that was up for purchase over 2 Nearwater Road on Farm Creek, and said, oh, that might be an interesting spot to build my house instead of here. And he purchased 2 Nearwater Road with the intention of building a house there. And as he started down that path, there was a fair amount of opposition to that, and he entered into an agreement to sell the Nearwater property to the land trust. At which point he said, okay, I'll go back to 280 Wilson and I'll build here. And in 2015, he pulled his CAM permit to build here. The deal at 2 Nearwater Road to give the property or sell the property to the land trust fell through. So then he went back to 2 Nearwater and went through with the approvals at 2 Nearwater to develop that property, which he only within the last couple of years completed his house there, which is where he resides now. By the time that he got through with all of that, and he had received a couple of extensions on 280 Wilson previously, he got through with all of his new house, still had the extension for 280 Wilson, but there wasn't an enormous market for a single family spec house in Norwalk in an industrial zone, no less. And so it sat. But maybe the only good thing that came out of the pandemic is that there's been a resurgence in the single family housing market. And there's some demand now for a waterfront house in Norwalk at this location. And so Bruce now feels the time's right to begin construction. And in fact, he went to the building department to try to see if he could sort of pull his permit, which triggered that we needed a CAM extension in order for him to do that. And the only other thing I'll add on this is that we're asking for a 2-year extension, not 1 year. And for these CAM approvals, your permit expired, you have to complete construction within the time frame, not just pull a permit. So if you gave us an extension now, he would have 2 years to complete construction. And very well, I don't know his exact construction schedule, but it may not be that he doesn't put a shovel in the ground until the spring, which may make being done with construction by October 1 not realistic. So we are asking for a 2-year extension, but I hope that's the last extension.
Okay, are there any questions for Attorney Blank on this? If not, can I have a motion to approve a 2-year extension?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Galen moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Michael seconds. Steve, can we do a roll call?
Ms. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Goldstein,
Yes.
Mr. Cantor,
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon,
Yes.
Mr. Mancini,
Yes.
and Mr. Schulman.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
unanimous.
you.
Okay, let's move on to what I referred to before as the 2 larger developments. The first one being 6-20 SP, Norden Place, KB LLC, 10 Norden Place special permit for proposed new 330,000 square foot warehouse and wholesale distribution use located in an existing building. Okay, and who is representing Norden Place KB?
I am Chairman Schulman.
Okay,
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members of the commission and Mr. Kleppen. My name is Carolyn Zambelli Cavolo. I'm an attorney with Shipman and Goodwin LLP. I am part of the team representing Norton Place KB LLC. Our team who's here tonight is as follows: Craig Benneroff from Benneroff Properties, Eric Lindquist, Tigan Bond, our project engineer, Grant Wright of Borison Architects, project architect, and Craig Yanis from Tigan Bond, our traffic engineer. So just some housekeeping on the application and where we are. The application for special permit for warehouse and wholesale distribution facility was submitted on June 30th. And since that time, our team's been working hard to gather and respond to comments from the various city departments and neighborhood stakeholders. We submitted revised plans and a supplemental materials booklet on September 23rd in anticipation of tonight's meeting, responding to a variety of comments and questions that we've received thus far and updating the commission on various aspects of our application. Everything's been posted on the city's website and available to the public. The proof of neighbor notification of filing of application was submitted on June 9th. The application has also been referred by city staff to the town of Westport, but comments have not yet been received. An update on our city department sign-offs and comments, which you can find at the tab 1 summary, is building department, fire marshal, first taxing district for water, and health department have signed off on this application, which you can find at tab 5. Questions have been received from WPCA and Transportation, Mobility, and Parking, which you can find at tabs 3 and 6 respectively. We are awaiting comments from DPW and Third Taxing District Electric, and will update the commission as soon as those responses are received. An update on neighborhood outreach. The ownership and design team met with the East Norwalk Neighborhood Association Board on August 25th to present the application and address their initial questions. Since that presentation, we have also received on September 11th additional questions from the ENA board, which we've addressed at tab 4 of our booklet. Both the supplemental materials booklet and the revised plans were shared with the ENA board last week. Our noise study is in the works, and we will have the report submitted to the city as soon as possible. With regard to the city staff's requested operations plan, we have supplied additional information in our supplemental packet, and Craig Benneroff will be speaking to those details in just a moment. We have requested the property tax waiver. This is found in tab 1 summary, and our letter is at tab 7. Let me share my screen if I can, and I will give a brief overview of our application and proposal before our ownership and design team speak. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Norton Place KB LLC, the applicant, is under contract to purchase a portion of 10 Norton Place. Let's see. The property will be divided by a land condominium, not a subdivision, to provide for a west unit and an east unit. The applicant will purchase the east unit and have the proposed use in that portion of the building. All easements of record and the conditions of the data center approval will be maintained by the condominium declaration. And just to show, this is the portion of the site that is the subject of the application and the proposed use. And the west unit over here, this portion of the building will remain as is. And this application does not deal with anything on that side of the building. We are dealing only with the east portion. The subject site is located in the restricted industrial zone, where permitted uses include manufacturing, research and development, and up to 60% of gross floor area can be used as office space. Specially permitted uses include warehouse and wholesale distribution facilities, oil or petrol storage facilities, processing, assembly, preparation of passenger motor vehicles. So we are proposing a less intense use for warehouse and wholesale distribution facility than what is permitted as of right on site for many uses, both as to employee count and traffic. And our design team will be addressing those points. But first, I would like to have Craig Benneroff of Benneroff Properties give an overview of the proposed use.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, my name is Craig Benneroff. I'm representing the owners to be, which is a partnership between Benneroff Properties and Caber Group. Benneroff Properties is a family real estate business. We operate a portfolio of properties just like this, light industrial, mostly in Connecticut and Westchester. Caber Group, similar real estate operators on a larger, more institutional scale based in New Jersey. We've a long history partnering together on properties like this. I want to thank the commission and the planners for working with us through this, special permit application process. And Carolyn asked me to, describe the operations of the building and the tenants that we're going to have in here. And that really gets to the core of this application, warehouse and wholesale distribution use. So while we can't tell you the name of the tenant yet, because we don't have the tenants yet, we're creating the space and then going to lease it. But we do know what the tenants will be like, because we have a lot of tenants like this, and they're all kind of the same. And I think it's important to understand what the word wholesale in the use, wholesale distribution. I think the best way to describe this is like a B2B situation. So the warehouse is used for businesses to serve businesses, in contrast to a B2C, or a business to consumer, which is like a package delivery facility, like a FedEx or a UPS or the post office. So that is not a use that we're entertaining. So I just want to be sure that we understand the difference here. And I can get in, and I want to talk more detail about what this B2B wholesale warehouse distribution use and tenants are like. So first, our architect was going to get into, the designs of the building and the renovations that we're making. But in a nutshell, what's great about this portion of the building and why we like it is it's open space. So there's a 30 by 30 column spacing, 18-foot ceilings, and we can create loading on both levels. It exists already on the lower. The tenants that use this kind of space, I think it should be thought, not thought of as just like a warehouse, full of people stacking boxes. Logistics and this role in the economy is becoming much more important now because of e-commerce. So this is a sophisticated facility. While offices are not shown, so actually let me step back to say that of the 300,000 feet or so in the building here, we're envisioning 2 to 3 tenants, so big spaces. But all of that, it's not like I was saying, it's not just full of boxes. There's office space in here, and there's, it's sort of like a high-tech company in a sense that, there are, account managers and logistics coordinators and managers and and people that are running the operation in addition to just the, raw space. And the movement of the shipments, the movement of the packages around the facility, it's not just, there's high skilled machine operators moving it. It's not just, again, low skilled workers moving boxes. So now to just get into it, we're envisioning around 100 employees in the whole space, and this was determined, again, these tenants all sort of operate the same, and there are studies that can tell you how many people will be here. So around 100 employees. The truck traffic trips, which Tig and Bond will get into later, is less use than would be employees in an office or a more manufacturing setup in here. So it's sort of a less use, a less intense use. Some examples of tenants like this in buildings that we have that are very similar. One is a company called Bunzl. They supply paper goods to restaurants, and paper goods like, paper plates, cups, napkins, and more to restaurants. So again, this is not going to people's homes. This is big shipments going to restaurants and other supply centers. Another example is like Graybar Electric. Again, 100,000 feet. They're supplying electrical contractors, not people in their home, but other contractors. And it's sort of big equipment, big moving of high value product. And another example is a company called Fulfillment Works, or some e-commerce fulfillment you might have heard of. So here, deliveries will come into the building and they'll be arranged for ultimately delivering to people, but they won't go from this building right to people. The FedEx or UPS will have a tractor trailer at the property that will be filled up and then brought to a UPS or FedEx facility where it finally gets distributed. So just want to differentiate between the sort of operation and the traffic through this type of building versus, say, a FedEx or a UPS. And that's sort of the basic outline.
Great, thanks, Craig. Let's see. Our next speaker is going to talk about the engineering of the project. And this is Eric Lindquist from Tig and Bond.
Hey, Carolyn, thanks. All right, so for the record, my name is Eric Lindquist. I'm a senior project manager at Tig and Bond and licensed engineer in the state of Connecticut. So I'll give just, as Carolyn had mentioned, a brief overview of the site improvements, drainage utilities, the layout and circulation throughout the site. As most of you are aware of the site, it's fully developed. There's pavement across much of the site, very little landscaping or non-impervious surfaces. The goal of our development is obviously not to touch any of that for the most part, with the exception of two primary areas. The first area being the site entry at the southwestern corner of the site, as well as the new loading facilities that are going to be located up at the northern face of the new building here and along the eastern front of it. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the driveway consolidation going on along Norden Place. Currently, there are 3 site entries to the development. One of them is to the north for Avalon, as well as for the Norden Place Office Park. And there are 2 on the southern side here, which Carolyn is zooming into. One serves primarily to the south entry to the site, and there's a second second entry that is located further south of that, which is not very heavily used. It's primarily for a sliver of parcel of land on the south side used by the state of Connecticut for some loading and storage areas for work they've been doing in the area. The goal for us was to consolidate this, as well as to better provide for truck circulation and entry into the site. As you can see, currently there's a very sharp hairpin turn as you kind of come in trying to get to the south. That's not very conducive for trucks and vehicles entering the site. So we wanted to kind of straighten this out a little bit and make it a more easy movement for the vehicles coming in to get to the site. So we've consolidated those 2 entries to have one less curb cut along Norden Place and to allow for this new entry to allow the trucks through there. So that's the primary change there. We also have allowed for the trucks to follow the same path along the whole east-west frontage of the railroad, I could call it, I guess, going to the east side of the building. We did have to make some changes to the existing islands along the east face of the building. Those were a little too tight for the trucks to get access through there without for competing truck traffic. So we did widen that up a little bit by tweaking the islands. Not much of a change there at all. You can see that with the darkened lines around those islands. And then we provided for additional loading bays on the north side of the building, which is the second area of development that we've been working on, which allows for a small truck court along the north side of the building, as well as a driveway that gets up to it. Those are the biggest changes to the site. But Carolyn, if you can go to the drainage plans, I'll go through some of the impacts that this will have on drainage. So this is the western side of the site. Basically, there is a couple of catch basins out in Norton Place, which currently drain onto the site through a channel. That channel goes to the south and discharges down by a swale that's in the right of way to the adjacent to the railroad. What we've done here is based on the way things were and how we're consolidating driveways. We had to add some additional piping there. So the drainage swale has been reduced significantly and is now more of a piped discharge, which still functions the same way. The change in impervious surface was pretty negligible over here, so there wasn't much of a change. If anything, I think it actually reduced slightly over in this area. So there's no increase in runoff going down there, but there is a change, and that is basically just to allow for the drainage to get from this Norton Place down to the south. So that was the only change there. And if you can go to the other sheet, Carolyn, I can talk.
And Eric, these are different, these are updates, right? To respond to some of the questions and comments. These sheets.
We didn't change anything here yet. No, I don't think there's any. I was approached by the city the other day talking about if there's a way of getting rid of that discharge, but it's still up in the air if that's even possible because there's really no place for it to go. So that's just being discussed now, and I just was notified of that about a day or two ago.
Okay, so next slide. This is
yeah. So up here, basically, this is the area where we've added a little bit of impervious coverage for the site. So what we've done is we've provided for additional structures up there for inlet structures for catch basins to pipe the drainage to an underground infiltration system. The infiltration system was designed to accommodate 1 inch of runoff for the increase in impervious area. It'll end up being very similar to the existing bioswales that are on the eastern parking lot that we installed as part of the data center. Due to that, you can see it there. There's a double row of infiltrators that are located along there. So what that'll do is the runoff will come in, infiltrate into the ground, and once those things fully fill up, it'll discharge as normal. So there is a slight reduction in flow as well as groundwater recharge being provided for that. In terms of utilities and mechanical spaces, we're not changing any of the mechanical uses or changes to the site. All the equipment's staying the same. There's no new service connections for utilities. There are a couple places where we had to relocate some water lines based on some of the improvements we're doing to the loading docks, but that's more of just rerouting some of the utilities and providing new utilities. But basically that's the large and small of it related to the site development and the changes to the site. It is our opinion that this can be operate and be able to operate safely with no concerns or adverse impacts for the surrounding area.
Eric, before we move on, can you just give a little bit of information on what we can do for LID elements?
Yeah, sure. So as the comment stated, there's not a lot of opportunity out here since we are leaving the site largely as it is, and it is a largely impervious site with pavement. The rechargers that we're adding are a form of low impact development. They are allowing for stormwater recharge and water cleansing. There's also, don't forget, on site along, which I just mentioned before, on the east face of the building, there are the existing, which is where a lot of the parking for this building is located and is part of this parcel. There are existing infiltrators in the ground right now that go through all those islands. So those add additional water quality for this site and what we're doing out there. Due to environmental concerns along the south side of the building, there's not much of an opportunity down there to do anything. But we've tried to provide as much as we can in the spaces we provided. I know there's a comment about green roofs and things like that. We can't add green roofs after the fact. Those are a load consideration, waterproofing and everything else. So you can't really add that to this building without significant retrofits. But we've tried to provide as best we can in the areas we can, ways of enhancing water quality in the locations that we can. And I hope that helps address some of that comment.
Great. And sorry, Eric, I was mistaken. The sheet that is updated for tonight is actually the site plan. So can you just go through, and I think you kind of already did this, but just so the commissioners know, this is an update from what was submitted because we're having some technical difficulties getting the updated sheets in last week with the rest of the plans. So can you go through the changes here from what was submitted originally? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. There's minor changes to this plan basically to address some of the staff comments that came in. There was a comment concerning the existing driveways on the other side of Norton Place, just being able to see where those were and showing them on the plan. Those have been clouded along the eastern side of Norton Place on this sheet. And you can see they're located about halfway up the sheet and then 3/4 of the way up the sheet. The other change to this sheet was adding, and there they are right there. The other change on this sheet was adding the parking and zoning tables to this sheet and adding some dimensioning along the sites in the plans. The dimensioning actually was on this plan before. It was just hard to see because it was part of the survey and it was grayed off. So we boldened out those numbers so it's easy to see where the zoning setback numbers are for frontages and side yards and things of that nature. So those have all been added, as well as now you can see at the bottom of the sheet the zoning table and parking table and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Yep.
Our next presenter will be Grant Wright of Borson Architect, discussing the architecture and the elements there. Grant?
Hey, hi, thank you, Carolyn. Can you see me all right?
Yeah.
There we go. Just want to make sure we could hear me. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Grant Wright. I'm with Kenneth Borson Architects in New Haven. I'm a senior project manager there. I've been a licensed architect, also a licensed architect in the state of Connecticut. So what I'm going to do here is give you a brief run through, and I apologize, I'm not looking at my phone. I'm just looking at the bigger screen here. But this sheet is basically just a brief rundown of some of the existing conditions that are happening on the site. As Craig and Carolyn and Eric mentioned, these are all, it's an existing building, 30-foot span column grid, 18-foot ceilings. It's approximately 330,000 square feet. We're looking at doing approximately 2 to 3 tenants, as Craig had mentioned. The first floor, so here, first of all, is we're looking, the upper left-hand corner is the northeast location where the current Pepperidge Farms addition is located, and we were looking to add 8 new loading docks in that area, that identified area there. Zoom out a little bit more. So next upper right is the Pepperidge Farms, existing Pepperidge Farms. Just below that is one of the existing courtyards along the west end of the building. I'll just scroll to the left a little bit. This is the southern portion of the existing building. This is, so the lower portion of it's 2 stories. The lower floor here is where we're adding, you can see the arrows to the existing four existing docks there. And there's actually, in the picture to the left too, there's another existing, so there's 5 existing docks along there, and we're looking at adding 6 new docks along this southern side. The pictures on the bottom are just existing courtyards and accesses and entrances to the existing building. The next slide, you'll be able to see the general floor plan. This is the lower portion, and for purpose of the drawing, I apologize, this drawing is backwards. It's, for our drawings, north on the drawing is actually south. So it's when you look at this compared to the survey, it is rotated. So on the upper portion is the south area, where we're adding the new docks on the lower portion. Again, thank you. And you can see approximately 122,000. We're looking at the rentable square feet here, so we're looking at about 150,000 square feet on this lower portion. Next slide will show the upper floor. And we can see along the bottom of the page, which is the northeast corner of the existing building, are the new 8 loading docks. So from a standpoint of aesthetics, the building is going to look pretty much exactly the way it looks now, except for a few new loading docks and the obvious site plan alterations. Next shot will show is we've added a few renderings here to give you an idea of what the space will look like. So this upper picture here is looking at the northeast entrance to the new loading docks. The picture below is the southeast entrance. Sorry if I'm talking too quick there. So this is the southeast entrance here, southeast loading dock. So total of, we're looking at a total of 18, correct me if I'm wrong, 18 total loading docks. And so this is a rendering down to the southeast of the building. Next shot will be, again, so what we did, Craig had supplied us with some aerial drone photos, which we worked to. These next 2 or 3 slides will show you the general concept of the existing structure. You can see the locations of the new loading docks. Again, it's minimal impact to the actual aesthetics of the building. Also from a mechanical standpoint, we're looking at utilizing existing rooftop systems. We're also looking at, from a lighting standpoint, site lighting will be minimal. I mean, what's required per civil, but we're also including new loading dock lights, which will be at each of those individual loading areas. Next 2 shots will show you some superimposed building over the existing drone, so you can get an idea of where. So in this image here, we're looking at the southeast corner of the existing building, the tracks to the left there. 95 is on the upper right-hand corner, but you can see the location of where those loading docks will be. And then the upper right-hand corner, the right-hand side is where the northeast corner and 8 new loading docks will be located. Next slide will just show you a better, clearer idea of how it's sandwiched between the 95 and the tracks there. And that's pretty much it. Oh, one other thing, we are also in the process of looking at signage right now. There's some existing ground signs located at the entrance, the current entrance, and we'll also be looking at, once the tenants are known, we'll be following all the Norwalk zoning regulations for size of signage, ground signs, and it will just have Norwalk Logistics Center with the individual tenants listed below that, which, like we mentioned, will probably only be 2 or 3.
Thanks, Grant.
You're welcome.
Our next presenter is our traffic engineer from Tig and Bond, Craig Yanis. Craig?
Yep, I'm here. Want to go to the next slide? Yeah, okay, great. So just for the record, Craig Yanis, project manager at Tig and Bond, licensed engineer in the state of Connecticut. I'm also a professional traffic operations engineer and a roadway safety professional. Tig and Bond was hired to review the potential traffic impact of the proposed development on the local roadway. And to do that, we performed the comprehensive industry standard traffic study to assess the conditions of the development in the area. The Office of the State Traffic Administration and the Norwalk Local Traffic Authority, the Norwalk Police Commission, have reviewed and agreed with our traffic analysis findings, and we're working with the city staff, the commission, and the neighborhood to respond to their comments and questions. As Carolyn mentioned, we submitted a supplemental response in section 6 of your package to respond to the comments that we received to date that are in addition to our study. So turning to the slides, this first slide here shows the study area for the traffic study. So the circles show the study area intersections that we analyzed. So we have the 2 intersections on Strawberry Hill Avenue at Beacon Street and Norden Place. The 3 site driveways, which will become 2 driveways, as Eric mentioned, on Norden Place. And then to the south, we have the Winfield Street State Route 136 and Triangle Street intersection to the south. You know, and as mentioned by Eric, the two driveways on the southern portion of Norden Place will be consolidated into one location. And that's expected to handle all of the truck traffic to the site. So all the truck traffic will be from that one driveway.
Greg, is it true that the primary route is the route through Strawberry Hill up to Route 1?
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
I'll show that slide in a little bit, but that is one option for the trucks. That's correct. So Craig Beneroff gave an introduction on the operations of the facility. I'm going to go into some further detail on the traffic expected at the facility during the weekday morning and afternoon peak hours, as well as the daily trips. But in terms of the study, we analyzed the weekday morning and the weekday afternoon peak hours for this development, because that's when the local roadways are at their busiest and when there's most potential for the site to have traffic capacity impacts. So if we could go to the next slide. This slide summarizes the estimated trip generation for the proposed warehouse use for the weekday morning and afternoon peak periods, along with the daily. So it's split into three sets of rows. The top set of three are the passenger vehicle trips or the regular vehicle trips. The middle set of three is the truck trips, and the bottom is the total of the two. So as you'll see in total, during the weekday morning peak hour, we expect about 65 trips, weekday afternoon 67, and throughout the day 575 trips for the warehouse use. You know, overall, as you'll see in the next few slides, this warehouse use is a relatively low traffic generator in terms of what a site of this size could generate. So if we flip to the next slide.
Can I ask one question on that slide?
Sure.
For that truck section, you have you have 90 total of 99, right? But only 4 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. When do you expect the other 91 trucks to be coming on site or about?
So the truck traffic is spread out throughout the day. This data is based on facilities across the country. So it could be any hour of the day. It's got a distribution to it. These are just the total counts that we get from those.
And when you say morning and afternoon, what does that mean exactly then?
So they're basically what we do is we review the roadways when they're at their busiest, as I just mentioned. So we take counts in the morning, counts in the afternoon, find that peak hour, and analyze that one peak hour.
So what was the peak hour for this?
Hang on 1 minute. It's 7:15 to 8:15 in the morning and 5 to 6 in the afternoon.
Thank you.
And just to follow up, when you said the data was aggregated from across the country,
Correct.
I'm a little confused because what we're looking at, you're just saying for a proposed warehouse of that square foot, that's what the average traffic would be like, no matter the surrounding context. So like you could be getting onto an interstate, or you could be getting onto a suburban road. That this data doesn't account for that, or am I incorrect?
I'm not sure what you're asking exactly. These are trips generated to a site based on their use. So a 330,000 square foot warehouse, this is the expected number of trips that would come into the site and out of the site in the total.
Right, but I'm asking, is there a differential between, say, a site that where it is easier to get to that site versus a site where it's more difficult to get to that site? You know, is there nuance in these numbers, or is this more binary?
These are aggregated and averaged for a reason. There's always different reasons for different sites to have different access patterns and amounts. You know, this for a warehouse, this is pretty accurate. It's based on a good data set. It's something that we expect to see, but it is an average. It could be above that number. It could be well below that number, depending on the tenants and the type of use. So this is our best guess of what the future might hold, and there's no other way but to base it on data and facts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's see here. Can we go to the next slide, please? So as we mentioned, there are some as of right uses available to us on the site. This table just summarizes what the trip generation of those might be. So there's 3 sets of 3 columns, just as similar to the last one, with the weekday morning, weekday afternoon, and weekday total trips. So if you were to fill the site with 330,000 square foot research and development center, you'd have 140 to 160 peak hour trips, 3,700 daily. A manufacturing facility filling the whole site would be about 200 to 220 trips in the peak hours and 1,300 daily. And if you were to fill the entire area with office space, it'd be, approaching 400 peak hour trips, 380 and 3,200.
For cars, correct?
These are total number of any vehicles entering the site.
Gotcha.
This includes trucks or anything else to that nature. And you'll see more on the next slide. But this is just kind of giving you a frame of reference of, we're talking about a significantly less amount of traffic than what these other uses would be. And if we were to think about other uses of this size in general, commercial, any other apartment activity, you'd also see similar higher numbers for their trip generation rates just based on the size of the property. We can go to the next slide.
Clarify is the general office use, those would mostly be cars, right? Unless the office workers.
Yeah, let's get to the next slide.
Okay.
So the next slide shows the comparison, and this is where I've broken out the trucks versus the cars for all the uses. So the top section is the warehouse. So you have the 65 and 67 AM, PM, and then the 574 daily. So you can see the same numbers of the trucks versus the cars in those. So if you go to the manufacturing, you'll see that during the peak hours, the truck traffic is similar. And during the day, it's slightly less at 155. For the office space, as you mentioned, it's significantly less truck traffic during the day, and only 3 trucks during the AM and PM peaks. For research and development, unfortunately, the truck and car split isn't available in our data set. So we only have the total number there. This includes all trips to the site. And we would expect the research and development to be somewhere between the manufacturing and the office space. So that just shows you the comparison of what truck traffic might be, what car traffic might be, and what we're analyzing at the top.
Just to ask a broader,
go
Lou,
ahead.
go ahead. Lou, go.
I think that what concerns the neighbors is that there are going to be 200 truck trips to that site every day. That sounds like a lot of vehicles. If you look at the morning and evening peaks, the number are actually quite small. It looks as if there are going to be far more trucks coming during the rest of the day than during the peak periods.
But that could be a good thing, because then you're not having the trucks access the network when it says at its busiest points. So there's more capacity for those trucks to make those trips. And just like anywhere in Fairfield County or on 95, the trucks don't want to be there during rush hour. They don't get anywhere. We don't get anywhere. It's not a benefit to them. So just speaking from that standpoint, there's more capacity for them to get in and out. And they're not impacting the commuter traffic.
Well, again, one of the points the neighbors made is there are 3 schools on Strawberry Hill, and you're going to have more truck traffic during the time, particularly in the afternoon, when children are coming home from school. So, that's an instance where that additional truck traffic during the day may not be a good thing at all. May be more of a hazard to school children.
Understood. It's a minor arterial roadway on Strawberry Hill. It's a public roadway. Any vehicle can use it. There's no reason that a truck traveling down a roadway is a hazard to anybody, just like any other vehicle is. So, is there a concern? Yeah, but this roadway is designed for this traffic network, and we're trying to keep the truck traffic on the major routes. This is one of the major routes in the area, and that's preferable to any of the neighborhood roadways in the area.
Well, again, I'd point out that when it comes to both bicycles and pedestrians, that trucks, given their numbers, cause a disproportionate number of collisions and incidents.
So for that fact, the entire study area has sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. On Norden Place, there's shared access, shared road markings for bicyclists. On Strawberry Hill Avenue, there's a bike lane in each direction. So the network for alternative modes of traffic is there here, and the roadways are still designed to carry this level of traffic, as you'll see when I continue my slides here. So turning to the truck routes, as was mentioned earlier, you know, as we discussed with the trip generation, planning for the trucks and access is significantly important to this project. And, you know, I understand the concerns with the truck traffic, and that's why we've done the analysis that we've done to date. So we've prepared this map kind of as a visual to show where the potential truck routes might be. And if you look at this, the green is by far preferable. Actually, I shouldn't say by far. It's preferable over by far over the pink, but not quite the yellow, but I'll explain each one in detail here. So the one in green, traveling north on Strawberry Hill and then onto US Route 1, doesn't have any over height restrictions with the railroad underpasses. There's no geometric concerns. So that's why this is what we are calling the primary route. So for the largest vehicles or vehicles that can't make it under the underpasses on the other routes, this would be an option for them. They can get up to Route 1, they can go east to Route 7, which leads to 95, or they can go Route 1 to the east into Westport and access 95 via several interchanges. The secondary option is the yellow route that you see highlighted in the middle. So that would be going north on Norden, left onto Strawberry Hill, onto Fitch, and then onto East Avenue. The main concern on this one is the northeast corner of the intersection of Fitch and East Avenue has a limited radius. The stop bar is set back in order to allow trucks to make that turn within that intersection, but it's still going to limit some of the larger trucks from taking that route. But if they're able to negotiate that turn, trucks can take that route without any height clearance restrictions. The third set of routes, the pink routes, these have significant height clearance issues where the height clearances can't be more than 11 to 12 feet. You know, trucks on these routes would be smaller box trucks or delivery trucks. Overall, these routes are not feasible for larger trucks that are generally over 12 feet in height. So, you know, that's what we're viewing as the options for truck traffic. The truck numbers and overall numbers are anything, you know, from a box truck to a semi-tractor trailer. So there is a mix of trucks coming to the site. There are a mix of routes that they can use. All of these roadways keep them either on Norden Place and Triangle Street, which access the site directly, or a minor arterial or primary arterial or principal arterial route in order to get to the interstate network. So it's by far getting the highest functional class, highest, you know, largest roadways that are designed for this traffic to get them to and from the site. So going to the conclusions, based on the analysis that we've performed, it's our opinion that the proposed warehouse is not expected to have a significant impact to traffic operations within the study area. The site has two driveways to split the traffic coming in, with the southern driveway focused on the truck traffic. As mentioned, the warehouse use is expected to generate a relatively low amount of traffic during the peak hours with, you know, 65 to 70 trips. These additional trips have a minimal operational impact during the peak hours. The signalized intersections within the study area operate at existing levels of service, a level service B and C overall, which is a very good result for this area. Queue increases are less than 1 car length on all the approaches. The site driveways, both entering and exiting, operate at level service A and B, which is also a very good level of service. And I showed on the previous map, there are truck access routes to and from the site from the major roadway network. Finally, I want to reiterate that the traffic analysis was approved by OSTA, the Office of the State Traffic Administration, and the Norwalk Local Traffic Authority. And we're working with the city staff and the neighbors on their comments and addressing them. You know, with that, I'll turn it back over to Carolyn to wrap up our presentation before we take questions.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, can I jump in real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to let the public know, because several times people have raised their hand. So everybody knows, this is not a public hearing tonight. The public hearing will be scheduled for a later date, so there's no Q&A with the commission from the public on this application.
Thanks, Steve. So just to reiterate a few points that Craig had made earlier with regard to the operational logistics of the logistics center. This is a business-to-business warehouse, and the employees will be high-skilled management level salaried employees doing one of these new economy jobs, and they essentially will be operating as account managers. And so that's sort of the employee base that we're looking at. With regard to some questions and some details that was requested by city staff, and also some neighborhood questions, the applicant will continue to own and operate the facility, and either the applicant or a related entity will have an on-site presence. With regard to sort of site details, each tenant will be responsible for their own trash and recycling, but there will be a regular dumpster service for common area trash, very similar to any office building that you might have. There won't be any third-party security anticipated on site, but there will be security cameras and building service employees on site during operating hours. With regard to operating hours, this is something that we are continuing to work through with staff. There's a little bit of a distinction that we would want to have. Just like any office building, tenants would be able to access the building at any time. When we talk about a 24-hour operation, that does not mean trucks would be coming in and out for 24 hours. It means that these tenants are professional companies, and their employees we would need to have access to this building at any time, to do the work that they do there. Having said that, the vast majority of the business operations, when deliveries are being made, when the trucks come in and then load and then leave, are expected to be in the early morning to late afternoon. So that would be the vast majority of.
What does early morning mean?
I would defer to Craig to give color on how these tenants typically operate. Craig, do you want?
It sounds like you're saying there's nothing also that's going to be limiting them from. It's not like you're closing the facility for trucks from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
No,
you're not doing anything like that.
No, we wouldn't. Simply because that's, we
add a little color. I can add a little color to it. By early morning, we're talking 6 in the morning to afternoon for, like I said, Craig said, it would want to avoid rush hour traffic. So maybe they're done early afternoon, but it does start early in the morning, 6 or so. In terms of a truck, say a truck arrived in the middle of the night and the building wasn't open, which could happen, or before 6 o'clock when the tenants weren't there to operate. Generally, a truck might park at the dock, turn off his truck, maybe turn on his generator and sit there and watch TV and wait. That I think that's what we see if somebody were to come at an off hour. But generally, the building's open when the people are in there and doing the logistics work to be prepared for the truck to leave. That's happening during normal business hours. So I think that's sort of the general operation. But like Carolyn said, like any office building, tenants could want to come in the middle of the night.
That makes a ton of sense. The thing I'm trying to hone in or to understand is the truck traffic, and then when the trucks are actually going to be driving through the neighborhood, past the schools, onto Route 1, like your traffic. It appeared that the traffic study took into account the primary route all the way up to where there's a ton of traffic already in the community, and trying to get a sense of when trucks are actually going to be coming and going. And I think that's also what Lou has mentioned as well, as you guys also are probably sensing from the community, is what people are most concerned about is when trucks are coming through the neighborhood.
Steve, are we doing our own analysis of the traffic study?
Yeah, I was going to mention that at some point whenever you felt like discussing it.
Okay, well, now might be a good time. I think, you know, there are two issues. One is safety, given that you might have close to 500 trucks running up and down Strawberry Hill every day. And number two, I think, goes to some of what Nick's trying to get at, and that is the issue of noise. I know that they have not yet completed their noise analysis, and I'm not certain what that includes. But we might ask our traffic folks to take a look at that as well.
Sure, I can put the request in.
If I could just add a little bit more, Steve, just wanted to in summary, just say that we think this is a beneficial and productive use of a portion of a long vacant site, and that it fully complies with the regulations and the POCD. With regard to the POCD, at page 55, there's a table with a list of action steps to create a multifaceted strategy to support entrepreneurs, startups, and tourism, as well as target industries to grow new and existing businesses. Action step 3 encourages updating land use regulations to allow and encourage a wider set of uses in targeted industrial zones focused on market opportunities in warehouse and logistics and other light industrial uses. Warehouse and logistics is precisely what we are proposing. On page 248, there is a similar table with action steps to modernize the zoning ordinance and the development approval process to achieve the goals of the POCD. As we're all aware, you are studying the industrial zones in the city, and we think that this is a really great use of this space. It's a very unique space, and it is really well suited to what Craig has described earlier as sort of part of the backbone of this new economy. At page 264, high priority strategies of POCD for prosperity and opportunity include the following: studying the industrial zone and updating zoning and land use regulations to allow and encourage a wider set of uses in targeted industrial zones focused on market opportunities in warehouse and logistics, brewing, distilling, artisan uses, and other light industrial uses that do not have detrimental externalities on nearby areas. We are preparing our noise study, our noise report, which we will get to the commission as soon as possible to address the questions posed with regard to the effect of renewed use at this site and the specific use of this logistics warehouse use. And we believe our expert testimony shows, and what we have put forth in our application shows that this is a less intense use than other permitted uses with no expected adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood. We thank you very much for this opportunity to present tonight in a more fulsome way to you, and we would be happy to answer additional questions now.
I guess without knowing the tenants for the site right now, it's hard to predict how much traffic is going to be generated, I guess, during the day and night. And I guess the community and the neighbors are going to be very concerned if deliveries are going to be made anytime during the night or anytime during the day. I think that's going to be a main concern that really comes up at the public hearing.
Steve, if we go ahead with our own traffic study, would we extend up through the primary route to see if there's what that impact would be? Because the traffic study at hand just sort of stops right when it crosses over 95 on Strawberry Hill. And I would imagine the traffic pattern more north when you hit Route 1 is going to create a very different choke point.
So the typical process would be if the commission raised a question or the peer review consultant raised a question, they would ask the applicant to do that additional analysis and then they would
Gotcha.
review that. They probably wouldn't take that on themselves.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thank you.
So can I respond to that? So the way that we selected the study area was a couple of different things. So first we look at what the trip generation of this is of the site, which I mentioned was, around 70 trips in the peak hour. We also look at previous traffic studies for the site. So previous traffic studies included our study area. And then the other piece that goes along with the trip generation is, what are kind of the industry standards? What are the state standards to look at intersections? So the state requires that you analyze any intersection that has 50 or more peak hour left turns or 100 peak hour trips going through an intersection. Once you take our 60 trips and you divide them by, 3 or 4 different routes, you get way below any of those numbers. And so we've actually just done the similar area that we've shown for that reason. And that is why the state analyzed asked for what they analyzed with the administrative decision application, the Office of the State Traffic Administration application.
But if I'm understanding you correctly, what you just said is you took the routes and divided it across the different routes that one could take. When in practice, it sounds like most trucks are going to hit the primary route.
So if we have 200 trucks in a day in 24 hours, that's 200 truck trips. So that's 99 trucks. That's only like 4 trucks an hour. That's well below the 50, well below the 100.
Gotcha.
Even if you sent them all one direction, they still wouldn't meet that number in a peak hour because we're only talking about 10 or 7 peak hour truck trips. So it's kind of, these studies, I understand the concern but these studies have to stop somewhere. We can't analyze the whole south end, with the east area neighborhood. So that's kind of what our process is. And, we're welcome to discuss that with you guys, with the peer reviewer, if you decide to go that route.
Other questions?
What are we talking about in terms of the average size of the trucks? Forgive me if I missed this before, but like, what the loading docks, the way the bays would be set up, what is a normal size truck going to be for this facility?
Either Craig could answer that. I'm not sure if Craig Yanis or Craig Benaroff want to jump in and answer that.
I mean, I don't know if Craig, if there's a professional answer to that. I think generally it's a mix.
Correct. The traffic truck numbers that I presented are any truck that's larger than a box truck, the FedEx size box truck and larger. So there's a mix of them. I think we would say that they differ based on the tenant and in terms of the loading dock accommodating them. Craig B or somebody else can answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, the question I was asking wasn't necessarily focused on the traffic, but more to get an understanding of the types of trucks that the tenants who using this site would be using. Like, are we talking about 18 wheelers? Are we talking about middle-sized trucks? Are we talking about F-150s? Like, I think people should have an understanding of what kind of trucks we're actually talking about here.
I think the answer to that is also tenant dependent in a mix. In our portfolio, we have tenants that do 100% 18 wheelers, like Gray Bar Electric to basically 100% 18 wheelers. We got another like Bunzel has some 18 wheelers incoming, but their outgoing is a fleet of box trucks. So I think it's a mix.
Okay.
Other questions? All right. If not, thank you for the presentation.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry,
Please.
I was a little late to the party. May I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Can you give a sense of how many actual employees you envision being in this whole 330,000 square foot space?
Sure. Craig Benderoff, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so we did discuss with the economists of how this is figured out since we don't have an actual tenant. And we came up with 100 employees for the entire 330,000 square feet. And I think you should, what's important for everyone to understand is, that these 100 employees, if this is a high paying, high level employee. So of this, there might be 10 to 20% of this warehouse space, which is office. So as managers, executives, salespeople, tech people, and logistics coordinators coordinate what's happening in the warehouse. So it's not 100 people just moving boxes in there. I just wanted to reiterate that, but 100 is around the number that we think for the entire facility based on standards.
I asked that question because if you look at the aerial photograph of the site, the area to the east has parking spaces for probably, I don't know, there's probably 500 to 600 spaces there. It seems to be, and the loading for the trucks is on the north and the south side of the building. It seems kind of strange that we have this massive island of asphalt with no need or purpose. And also, could the building be, you said you can't do a green roof. I understand it's already an existing roof. Why couldn't you do solar on the roof?
Well, just to answer the parking question first, is that, it's striped the way it is because it was a manufacturing facility that used to have thousands of employees. There will be employees parking there, and there likely will be extra trucks. We might stripe it differently, or maybe the lot may be used differently than it's striped now.
I'll just jump in on that particular question. You have to remember, from a zoning perspective, this is all one parcel with both the data center and the remaining west unit that would be staying as is. So one of the things that we work on with Ms. Wilson and Mr. Kleppen is just making sure that all the necessary parking it remains in place for not just the current approved uses, but also for, for instance, there are protocols in place for being able to park data center employees if their use ever changes. This is it's a very regulated site, and we are working within the envelope of those to park everyone we anticipate needing to park, even with the site changes, to accommodate the new Southern Access Way, or the revised Southern Access Way.
Yeah, I understand that some of the data center has an overflow parking demand if we ever have another like 9/11 situation. But I think if that ever occurred, I think the last thing people would be worrying about is where cars are parking to go to the data center. So I think it seems that 99% of the time you're going to have I don't know how many acres of extra parking that are just going to be underutilized or unnecessary. I think now might be the time to rethink or repurpose that space.
Okay, so in what way?
It could be I'd rather see a building there with a purpose, or B, remove the asphalt and vegetate it.
Okay. Anything that we would do, I'd have to double check I think certain areas, I'd have to double check. There are certain areas that are still in the UTC indemnity section in terms of needing to keep a cap on the property. But we can certainly look into that, and we can certainly look into additional features.
Okay, thanks.
And then Lou, I had just one thing on the routes where it showed the primary, secondary, and tertiary routes to the site. I believe the tertiary route showed getting off exit 17 on 95 in Westport. I mean, if you're talking truck traffic, there is the underpass there from the railroad, and it's only a 10-foot high underpass. So, that might affect the routes that the trucks would take. since they're probably not fitting under there.
Yeah, that's correct. They're both of the tertiary routes, the pink routes, have those restrictions. If you zoom over to the side, they're marked on there. But yeah, that's 10 foot 11, 11 foot 2, and 12 foot 2 on the other route. And that's really the challenge that we have. You can see by the roadway network that some of the area here and some of the industrial uses aside from the site, where the city has tried to make the yellow, the secondary route, the route for trucks to take. So that you have the two other local streets to the north there, Myrtle and Raymond, and they have, no through trucks and restrictions on turns and things of that nature. Strawberry to Fitch is a very gradual turn to the right and left. But you just have the one issue on the northeast corner of that Fitch and East Avenue intersection that's going to limit some trucks from that route. So I think the city's done a good job trying to channelize the traffic to these major routes, and that's what we're trying to, take advantage of and help the situation, keep them out of the neighborhoods. And yeah, both pink have significant issues, we just won't be able to navigate.
And how do you regulate that? How do you make the trucks go on these routes? What if, I understand there's certain roads they'll probably avoid or can't go on anyway, but with Waze and all these other applications, how do they, what if he decides, this seems like a better route today and starts doing that?
If the trucks can physically fit, there's nothing that stops them from going any way that they want. I would have to say, if you hold a CDL and you approach an you're over height for an underpass, then you're probably in a little bit of trouble. There's quite a few of those on the Merritt Parkway. So truckers know the routes. They know the best routes to the location, and if they can make it, they can take it. It's a public roadway as long as it's not signed for no through trucks.
Other questions?
Steve, I'm not sure if we got an answer to your question about the solar on the roof.
We could look into that, but I'm not sure we could commit to anything right now.
But Steve, there are still a fair number of unanswered questions. I don't think we're prepared to set a date yet for public hearing. Next steps?
Well, the peer review for the traffic is going to take several weeks. I don't know which questions you want to get answered in the interim. I mean, we can set the public hearing date for the beginning of November if you would like the applicant to come back later in the month and address any questions that, that's possible as well. I think the date is the 21st, if there's questions that you'd like in the interim.
We have some time. Why don't we play it by ear? Because it may well be that they're simply communicating with you and you're then communicating with us will be sufficient.
Okay.
I'd hate for us to have to go through another dog and pony show, and I'd hate for them to have to put one on for us if it's not necessary.
Okay, I can circle back with the applicant, and we'll see if we can pin down exactly what can be addressed in the short term, if it makes sense or not.
Okay, and I think the applicant has a good idea of what our concern is here. And I think it's important that you do everything you can to address those issues. With that, thank you, and we'll look forward to further communication between you and our staff.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Kleppen.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is 9-20 SP, TB Norwalk Apartments LLC, 467 West Avenue, what we have been calling in the past the Pinnacle. And who will be making the presentation?
That's me, sir. This is Craig Flaherty, a principal and senior engineer with Redness and Mead, a land use consulting company with offices in Stamford and Wilton. And I'll be speaking for TB Norwalk Apartments LLC, which is Toll Brothers, the new owners of 467 West Avenue, 7 Butler Street, and 3 Quincy.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. In addition to me on the call tonight, you have David Sands, who is the Director of Development with Toll Brothers. And we have Bill Warwick, our architect, principal with Barton Partners. We also have Eric Rains, our landscape architect of Eric Rains Landscape Architecture. I'm going to share the screen now as we get started. So this is just a color rendering of the site. I'll go to the aerial to give you an orientation. The site is outlined in blue. This is a 2017 aerial before some of the demolition that occurred on site. West Ave is clearly visible on the west side of the site. Left side of your screen, you see Route 7 corridor way off on the left. Maple Street here coming down from the hospital, which transitions into Orchard Street. Quincy Street on the east side, and Butler Street on the south side. Butler turns into Harbor, and this is Crescent down here. This is a part of what's been long envisioned and mostly constructed of the Waypoint development. You see the other completed buildings in the aerial, larger middle block with its pedestrian way and successful restaurants. The Tea House Lofts on the north side of Merwin Street, where BBQ's is. We've got Berkeley Frost over here on the west side of West Avenue, and also have Quincy Lofts here on the east side of Quincy. So I've now actually had the opportunity to be involved with Waypoint for close to 10 years, and we've tried to get the South Block out of the ground several times before. Now that Toll Brothers is involved, I think we're closer than ever to kind of finalizing the completion of the envisioned Waypoint development. Toll certainly comes with a lot of experience, firepower, determination, and I think that's good for the continued investment in Norwalk and specifically in the Central Business District on the West Avenue corridor. We're excited about the design of the plan, and hopefully, as you carefully consider it and look at it over the next couple of months, you will be too. That process, of course, will include a design review by your consultant architect. It'll include referrals through the SEAC process, which is just starting and potentially scheduled for next week. It'll include feedback from the redevelopment agency and the historical commission. So this is the beginning of the process. This is just our initial presentation, so we'll make it that. And in an attempt to be more concise, I'm going to give you the brief highlight of the application. Certainly our landscape architect, Eric Rains, and our architect, Bill Warwick, are here for questions and follow-up. But we expect to see more thorough presentations from them at a later date when we're a little farther along in the review process. I invite them to jump in should I miss something or say something that's not correct. So to give you a sense of where we were and where we are today, this is the breakdown of the numbers. So the 2017 Pinnacle approval is still valid and still usable. And this is how we compare our current proposal, the 2020 proposal, with the 2017 approval. So the building is largely the same size, 520,000 square feet to 550,000 square feet. We had 330 apartments in the last approval. We have 393 in this request. The breakdown is indicated there. It was a pretty even split between 1 and 2 bedrooms last time. This time, we're trending a little bit more towards more 1 bedrooms and fewer 2 bedrooms. But we've also added 3-bedroom apartments, which we think is kind of something new and unique with this application to the neighborhood. Of course, you remember some of our anchor tenants last time included a theater and a gym, and we had 100,000 square feet of commercial floor area. This time, much more moderate amount of commercial floor area, and I'll get to that during our presentation, about 14,000 square feet. Now, I should say that the application says all the commercial space is restaurant. We do that in the application just to make we make sure we can park the most intensive use. So we park for restaurant. It's not that we anticipate all this 14,000 square feet being restaurant. It'll probably be a mix of uses. And we'll focus on those that make sense for the neighborhood and our apartment dwellers. So the parking goes down because of the significant reduction in commercial space, 576 parking spaces instead of 940. And it's actually a little less height as well. The last plan had sections that were 7 stories, and in addition to basements. And we're looking at 6 stories and only 1 section of basement and a small part of the plan. So in addition, I've put the 2017 approval on the top of the screen here and our current proposal on the bottom of the screen. If you're flying over the site, you might not notice the difference. It's still, even though it's 1 structure fully connected, it really appears as 2 buildings, a west building and an east building. The west building surrounds an internal courtyard. The east building surrounds, just see if I can do, yeah. The east building surrounds a parking garage and screens it from view from the perimeter, and there's the large pedestrian way down the middle. Now that's the 10,000 foot view. We're going to get into some of the details, and when you get into some of the details, there are actually a lot of changes and a lot of improvements, we think, to the proposed plan. Areas of step back, which we'll talk about in more detail, more room for the neighbor on the southeast side, a widened throat at the bottom of the pedestrian street to let more southern light in and be more inviting entrance from the park. And one of the larger changes is that courtyard you see on the left side. In the 2017 approval, that was really a roof deck over top of the commercial uses. In this approval, it is on the ground. There is no roof below that courtyard. So based on a few comments that we received from staff that may have originated with some of you, I'm going to focus tonight just on kind of 2 important components of the application. And one being the proposed reduction in commercial floor area, and 2 being our request for a special permit and how we comply with that request. So go back to here for now. So over the last 10 years, a lot has changed. In the neighborhood, things have changed. In Norwalk, things have changed in the region and in the world. And this modified design we're requesting approval for reflects those changes. So right off the bat, I am not aware of any gyms and theaters that are looking to expand and add new locations at the moment. Contrary, I think, unfortunately, they're hoping to be in business a year from now. They are struggling because of the COVID pandemic. Even before that, IPIC had gone bankrupt, which was to be one of our anchor tenants for a while. So ultimately, I think removing those elements from this block is a good thing for Norwalk. 1 less theater means it's more likely that your other theaters in town might survive. 1 less gym here makes it more likely that your other gyms might survive. Similarly, when you drive up and down West Ave, there is vacant space that you can see. There is still vacant space in the other developed sections of Waypoint. and there's vacant space still in the mall, and they're very aggressively trying to fill that up. This year hasn't helped, unfortunately, and it may be that things are going to get worse before they get better. In general, the pandemic has accelerated trends that were already occurring previously, those being the transition to online shopping and services, and the ability to work from home, and companies more tolerant of people working from home. So unfortunately, I heard in an NPR story that nationally we're on pace for the most store closing and retail bankruptcies since 2010. The other thing that's changed is that when we started Waypoint 10 years ago, the property on which the mall sits was approved as District 957, which at the time was to be a mixed use kind of live, work, play development with 100,000 square feet of retail, 300 apartments, a hotel, and upwards of 500,000 square feet of office. For good reasons, the mall was approved and built, but now you have a site that has 728,000 square feet of retail and no residential. So we've added a lot of retail space since Waypoint began. There's only so much retail and commercial space that the central business district can absorb successfully. And given all of the circumstances described, as of right now, there's probably an oversupply of that. And it's going to take some time for it to come back into balance. As far as residential goes, the opposite is largely true. Vacancy rates in new apartment buildings remain low. And with people working from home and not needing to commute or able to live farther from work, we think adding more apartments for people to live in the central business district and become the folks that shop, eat, play, and work in their neighborhood is certainly the right choice for where we're at. Certainly the right choice for Norwalk and the central business district. We want to create customers. We think that Toll Brothers has come up with a very responsible plan in that regard. This is effectively the floor level floor plan that we're looking at on the screen right now, sheet A2. And it focuses the retail and commercial area is that kind of deep peach color, orange color on the left side of the screen. Let me use the hand, that might show up a little better. There we go. On the left side of the screen. So we complete the West Ave face with retail front, which is the priority. We turn that corner onto Orchard Street, which gets us very close to the pedestrian way and kind of the restaurant row at the middle block. But that's the total of the commercial space. So we still keep the pedestrian street element because we want to ultimately connect the park with the pedestrian street on the north side of the site. But we've done a lot to try to make sure that it is more lively, right? Without having that commercial space. So we've turned the corner in purple here. That's the amenity space associated with the residential building. So we have a lot of glass there. There'll be a lot of translucency so you can see activity into that amenity space out on the pedestrian street. We've got our two residential lobbies positioned on either side of the pedestrian street. So the west building lobby is here and the east building lobby is here. We've got the entrances to the parking that spill out onto the pedestrian street. And then we'll have the through traffic basically that's just north and south circulating between the park and the block to the north. And these are all the things we've done to try to make it comfortable. You'll see through the design that we think that's going to be very successful. But ultimately prioritizing West Avenue is what the West Avenue Corridor Plan says. It's what the West Ave Wall Street Neighborhood Plan says. And it's what your recently changed just last year Central Business District regulations say. So this is a sheet, page 55 out of your neighborhood plan. It talks about West Avenue being the commercial corridor. It talks about some of these other streets which are indicated in blue as really just connecting corridors. So when you read on past this page, the commercial corridor is where you want your retail life, your commercial life. The connecting corridors, you're just trying to make it more comfortable for people to walk around the neighborhood and get back and forth. So you develop the idea that you could walk somewhere to go shopping and not have to necessarily get in your car. And so we're doing the same thing here. Your regulation, of course, talks about the street level uses on arterial roads. That means West Avenue. Need to be welcoming externally and have an active street presence. Again, they're focusing on West Avenue. So we'll continue to remain open-minded through this process. I know there was some question about whether or not there could be a retail storefront or two on Butler Street. We'll remain open-minded about that. I would ask you to think about that when you're driving through the area. This is not something that your plans and reports are suggesting is a priority. When I look at Butler Street, I don't think one or two street retail fronts are going to be successful there. They'll really kind of be alone. It won't be a critical mass at this point to drive people to want to go to those one or two storefronts. You know, there's not going to be development across the street. That's where the Children's Museum is. Over to the southeast, you still have some light manufacturing and industrial uses in Amex transfer station and Sclafani's building. So we think this is the right plan, but certainly we'll keep an open mind as people ask questions and make comments. So the next thing that we want to touch on tonight is the question of the special permit, and that being related to building step backs at the upper level, not setbacks, but step backs. So that is another thing that has changed since the 2017 approval. Your regulations changed since the 2017 approval. They changed back in 2019. And the regulations have introduced the idea of building step backs at the upper levels. Your regulations provide two pathways for approval vis-a-vis that new standards. The first pathway is via a standard approval, site plan approval, and the second pathway is through special permit. Both pathways allow for the building face to be on the property boundary. There's a 0-foot front yard setback, there's a 0-foot side yard setback. But in order to be eligible for the standard site plan approval, you then need to step back that building at the 3rd, 4th, or 5th floor. However, the regulations allow for flexibility in this standard, which is good, with the understanding that there are alternate ways to achieve the intended objective, and those alternates should be evaluated on a case-by-case or site-by-site basis through the special permit process. We believe we are eligible for that special permit, and we believe that the proposed design meets the intended objectives of providing, one, enhanced pedestrian experience and overall streetscape, and two, not adversely impacting our neighbors. Those are the two standards that you are to judge this special permit request by. Is taken right from the CBD schedule and the regulations. So I'll take those on one at a time. The first is the idea of an enhanced pedestrian experience. So the regulation, hold on a second, I'm just going to get some water. The regulation reads, the proposed design will provide for excellence in design, which enhances the pedestrian experience and overall streetscape. First, let's start with what your baseline is. So right in the CBD regs, they talk about a baseline width for a sidewalk. And right in the CBD regs, they say the baseline width, we want to make sure on West Avenue and turning the corners off of West Avenue, the sidewalk is at least 7 feet wide with a 2-foot snow shelf. DPW also has a standard, it's very similar. They want to see a 7-foot wide sidewalk. Both want 5 feet clear without obstruction. So I've taken Eric's landscape plan and I've indicated the widths of the sidewalks that we are proposing. And I should make a note before that. So one thing that we're doing that wasn't done at the Middle Block or Tea House Lofts or Quincy Lofts was we're actually moving the curb line 9 feet closer to our site on 3 sides. And we're moving the curb line 9 feet closer to our site on 3 sides to provide on-street parking. So we are handicapping ourselves by 9 feet and giving that to the public. That's not included in our parking count. It'll be public parking for anyone visiting anything in the neighborhood to park and use. Anecdotally, I think it's going to solve some problems right now on Orchard Street with the success of the restaurants and the need for pickup service. You get some people, just running in and out by parking on the south side of Orchard, which is causing some traffic problems. So we'll actually provide a place for those folks to park at the end of the day. So in addition to moving the parking in, I've shown the sidewalk widths in blue here on this exhibit, starting at West Avenue. Got about 14 feet here, 17 feet here, 14 feet here on Orchard, 18 feet here on Orchard, 15, 17, 15, 21 feet over here. We're providing a planter at street level, so not including the planter, we still have about 10 feet. We've got 17 feet over here. Moving down to Butler, 15 feet. I got an enhanced kind of parklet over here on Butler, 19 feet and 16 feet there. So we are providing wide sidewalks everywhere, well in excess of the 7-foot minimum required, and in addition to the parallel parking spaces that were required. The parallel parking, yes, sir.
If a substantial amount of the space on West Avenue, for example, is going to be restaurants, then essentially that's going to become outdoor dining space, and doesn't really serve to widen the sidewalk during the late spring, summer, and early fall.
Yeah, as I said up front, I don't know that all of these spaces will be restaurant. We just assumed they were to park them. We are kind of imagining that there might be 2 spaces suitable for restaurant, one at the corner, one at the corner of Orchard and West, and the other at that southwest corner. In both locations, we have significantly wider sidewalks. So there's this plaza at the northwest corner, which runs 100 feet long as it wraps around the building. It's 25 feet wide here, 35 feet wide here, 20 feet wide here. So we think that's a natural location for outdoor dining and can be done successfully without at all obstructing the pathways, the desired pathways for pedestrians. Similarly, we're looking at how to use this space more successfully because it's 20 feet wide, not 13 feet wide. But we will obviously commit to following all the standards, which is maintain the sidewalk as the priority. So the parallel parking does another thing which is helpful to pedestrians, right? So if you're on the curb line without inset parking and you want to cross the street, you actually have cars obstructing your view of traffic on the left and right. When you inset the parking, whether you're at this intersection on the left, whether you're at the pedestrian street in the middle, or you're at this intersection on the right, you've got a much better view of the traffic moving around because the parking is inset. So that's a benefit to the pedestrians. In general, I also don't want to take for granted that this project dedicates a 300-foot long, 45-foot wide pedestrian way to the public realm. Yes, there is one project to the north that's done that, but I don't think there's a lot of projects in general that do that. That is still something very special and very unique about this proposal, which goes to enhance the pedestrian experience. We've got 28 street trees, 27 street lights, granite curbs, paver banding, permeable paver tree pits, permeable paver plazas. The pedestrian way is all permeable pavers. We've got street furniture, we've got lighting. We're looking at kind of overhead hanging lighting within the pedestrian way. And we'll probably have some other, architectural and aesthetic and sculpture-like elements to improve the experience of the streetscape. In total, I think that we've set a very high bar on this particular standard, which is the threshold of enhancing the pedestrian experience. We look forward to refining that design through the referral and design review process. That said, I do have a lot of faith in Eric Rains and Bill Warwick to continue making this the excellent design that it is. So we talked about two required elements of that special permit consideration. One is the enhanced pedestrian experience. The second is impacts to neighbors. So your regulation reads, due to the location and or design of the proposed use and the size of existing neighboring structures, no neighboring property will be adversely impacted by such structure. So that's the second test. Don't hurt your neighbors. So in your packets, we did submit last Friday a couple of different studies. One was this study, which is the cross-section comparison, which compares what's allowed in your standard regulation versus what we're proposing to do. As I was preparing for this meeting tonight, we added 3 more cross sections. So we still need to get this second sheet into you, and we'll follow up in the next day or two to make sure staff has it. I'm going to start with this one and go back to the previous one. So we looked at cross sections first in this one at our neighbors, and so our neighbors are in the lower right corner here, the little white church, which is the Holy Temple Church at 1 Quincy Street, and the thing that everybody calls a church, but was most recently a rug store and now is being renovated at 455 West Avenue on the southwest corner. So we took a cross section, north-south here at the Little White Church and east-west here at the Little White Church, and we took a cross section north-south at the rug store to get a sense for how our proposal compares to your standard regulation. So the first section I'm going to show you, this is at the Little White Church. It's that north-south view. So you'll see 2 sets of lines. There's the mock-up of the church here. You'll see green lines and you'll see blue lines. Green lines is what is allowed by your zoning regulations without a special permit. A standard site plan approval is what you could build to what the green lines are showing. So you could have a 0-foot setback and go up with your building face. You would either have to, at the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th story, set that building face back 10 feet. Because this is a religious use, there's another standard that above the 4th floor, it has to set back 20 feet. And then you could go up to a 75-foot building height. In this location, we're set back 21 feet the whole way up to a lower building height than we are allowed of 64 feet. So we are providing more space and air and light and comfort to our neighbor here than even your base regulations allow. Similarly, this is off the back side of the church. This is the back side of the church here. We run the same analysis. It's the same geometry for the green, the 0-foot setback, 10-foot setback at either the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th level, that 20-foot required setback at the 4th level. And you can see how our building face is well in back of those requirements. Actually, this particular building face meets the base regulation because it goes up 2 stories and then steps back for the remaining 4 stories in that location. Again, not using all of the building height around the church. So this cross section is at the rug store. Rug store is mocked up here on the left. This is not a religious use, so it doesn't have that 3rd standard. So 0-line building setback and a 10-foot step back at either the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th level. And you can see how far away we are. So I think the intent of the regulation here is to provide a little breathing room for your neighbors, right? We're clearly providing more breathing room than your standard approval allows. So we did that same test on West Avenue a few times on Orchard Street, on Quincy Street, on Butler. I'll just point out a couple of things. I think the punchline is everywhere we tested, we're giving more room than the base regulation allows. You'll see that in these sections, which you have a copy of. So, but this is West Avenue. Our retail storefronts do stand proud of the building on West Avenue. We create a step back at above a tall retail ceiling, so above the first story, not above the second story. That similar step back occurs as you turn the corner on Butler Street in a similar fashion. Of course, we have the pedestrian street, which is kind of the opposite. There's a negative space down at the pedestrian street, but that serves to really separate two entire buildings and two entire spaces, which we think breaks up the massing. Over on Butler Street, this is a cross section right here on Butler, we do have a step back above the second story there as well. And you can see how that works with your allowed regs versus what we're proposing in blue. So that was one test we used to show that we weren't harming our neighbors. The other test we looked at is, well, how are we relating to the buildings across the street and how the streetscape is going to feel. So we looked at average setback and we looked at the average setback at the Waypoint, at the Berkeley, and at Quincy Lofts. And we looked at our average setback for the same streets. So right off the bat, right now, the mid-block of the Waypoint is set back 6.8 feet. Sorry, if you can't read that, you do have this. I'll zoom in a little bit. 6.8 feet. Our upper story setback is 24 feet. So we're set back, 15 or 16 feet farther right off the bat than the Waypoint. Similar on Orchard Street, the average setback at the middle block is 8.8 feet. We have an average setback of 15.9 feet. On Quincy Street, there's an average setback of 10. We're closer to 14 across the street. And on Butler Street, our average setback is 17 feet. Butler Street is a very gracious space. And of course, West Ave is a larger right-of-way. Across from Butler, you have a park that's not going to have a building, so we're always going to have a lot of southern exposure there. So we believe these exhibits and these studies help prove that we deserve the special permit, that ultimately we're providing significantly more space, light, and air to our neighboring properties than is required by the regulations. And the allowance of the special permit will not adversely impact those neighbors as compared to what could otherwise be built using the standard site plan approval process. I think that's really the test. So I would be remiss if I didn't show you the pretty pictures. That's what really everybody comes for, I think. This is how our renderings are looking at the moment. This is what you see on West Avenue. So the rug store far right, middle block far left. This is kind of our prominent retail foundation. We've got a mid building. We've got changes at the top of the building, all things that are described in the neighborhood plan. 75% glass on West Avenue, which is a requirement of the neighborhood plan and the design guidelines. And you can see that on street parking and how that also fits in, as well as this plaza area. This is the north view into the pedestrian street. So this is if you're coming out of the mid block across from Barcelona and starting to walk in our pedestrian street. These elements are still in process, but I think they're going to get even cooler than this, especially with the suspended lights or these vertical tower features, places to sit, etc. This is the Butler Street elevation. So you see the outspill from the pedestrian street. Again, we've kinked open the pedestrian street at the end to provide a wider throat there and kind of be more welcoming. And you see how the building massing, again, really steps back here, sets back from the curb line there for our little parklet. And this is one of the two entrances in and out of our garage. And you can see how this building is set pretty far away from the little white church to give that building some respect. And this is the south view into the pedestrian street looking to the north. Again, lots of light spill because it's the south side. Larger vegetation will be much more successful here. There's a few stairs if you go up the Central Way, or a 5% walk if you want to go through the garden. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any of your questions or have some of our professionals answer your questions. As we noted at the start, this is the beginning of the process. We look forward to working with you and the other referral agencies so we can deliver a project that we're excited to build and you're excited to see get built.
Questions? All right, well, if not, I have a couple.
I'd hope so.
I don't want to sound cynical about this, but I think it's worth pointing out that, and I understand, excuse me, I understand issues with retail right now, for sure. But I think the reduction from close to 100,000 square feet to 14,000 goes further than it should. And keep in mind that the retail does not have returns as high as apartments do. And we're talking about an additional 63 apartments, which will produce additional revenue. We're talking about substantially less parking, which reduces the capital cost. So it seems to me another way of viewing this, and I'm perfectly willing to suggest that it may not be fair, but it's certainly another way of looking at it, is that almost everything's been done to increase the revenue generated by the project, reduce capital costs, but at a cost to the city in terms of retail for the community. One of the reasons for suggesting the possibility of retail across from the park is to try and activate that space as a way of encouraging people to go into the park. I mean, I don't know what kind of retail that might be, but, this is not my field, but something like a small luncheonette might help to serve Matthews Park because there's nothing within Matthews Park where you can get some food. So I'm concerned by that. The architecture, again, I don't mean to sound hostile because overall, I think it's a decent project. But I think the architecture could have been lifted from any of the recent buildings that have been put up in Norwalk recently, any of the Waypoint buildings, or any similar types of projects really throughout the country. I don't think there's anything much that distinguishes it architecturally. And so I feel a little bit different about the setback that is required. I thought if it was architecturally more interesting, architecturally more adventurous, that maybe we should consider that. But I really don't feel that that's the case here. So,
Mr. Chairman, I absolutely appreciate your candor. We're here to hear your comments and to help us make this a better project for everybody. I will point out that one of the likely reasons the 3 prior versions of the South Block didn't get built was because the margins didn't work to attract investors. So something did need to be done to change the equation a little bit to make it more likely this project will get built. I'll also point out that in the change of the regulations last year, you added to the Central Business District an additional workforce requirement of a 1% fee on the residential construction costs. That's going to be several hundred thousands of dollars that we're going to have to write in a check to the city of Norwalk, which is a cost. So I do think this is the right choice for Norwalk at this time. I don't think we're shortchanging the city at all. I think we're doing the right mix for what needs to happen in the city at this time. But we can continue that conversation, and we're happy to. Again, the architecture, we're just starting our design review process. We're here with open ears, and that is definitely something that can be modulated as the professionals start taking a look at it. But I will say, when you read the language that we need to meet on the special permit, it's not necessarily talking about adventurous architecture. It is talking about enhancing the streetscape and not harming your neighbors. And on those fronts, we believe we passed the test. But we still want to make a beautiful building that you're proud of, and we'll work with the design review team to do that.
Questions from other commissioners?
Have you considered any sort of green features in the project, whether that's solar or other elements?
We can look at that. I don't know what Toll has done in previous projects, but give us a chance to talk it through with the team. The permeable pavers is a big component of that as an LID feature. We're happy to be doing that. Obviously, this is redeveloping a largely already developed site, which is a good target for staying LID. But we'll see as we go through the process what kind of commentary we provide on that.
And then one other question I had was, in your experience in the area, how much of the other projects are getting to full capacity on the parking?
That's well, in general, they're overparked. I can look into that a little more. Berkeley is way overparked. Middle Block's overparked. Tea House Lofts and Quincy Lofts are probably pretty close.
When you say overparked, you mean they have too many cars in the space?
Meaning, other way around.
Right.
Empty
That's
spaces.
my concern, is this the perpetual effort?
You have been tweaking down your parking requirements in the Central Business District. That's another reason the number of spaces dropped. It wasn't just the reduction in commercial. It was a little bit the adjustment in your reg. And we do think it's pretty close to what market wants at this point at that 1.3 rate.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't know if anything would change in the design or interest to the project if the parking reduced further.
Yeah.
Thank you for both of them.
I just want to say that I have sympathy for what Lou is saying. I also have sympathy for the fact that it's very difficult to attract retail today. I was in the Sono collection recently, and there are lots of empty spaces. And we want to encourage the Sono collection because that's an already existing huge development that's trying to attract retail. So I have a lot of sympathy with the fact that it's very difficult right now for you to compete with them and to provide retail. But the idea of a luncheonette or something near Matthews Park, I think that's a wonderful idea.
Let me also say that when I talk about retail, I'm really talking about neighborhood retail. I'm not talking about large stores, but the kinds of stores that will serve the residents of these buildings.
Thank you for your comments.
Anything else from the commissioners? Steve, any comments?
Yeah, thank you. Craig, could you pull up the like the view looking from the park into the development?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The close-up or the full elevation?
Yeah, maybe the full elevation, if you don't mind. Okay, I think picking up on the chairman's point, I think, and overall, I understand completely the volume reduction in the commercial space. I just question more the disbursement of it than I do the volume, because I think the intent of the regulation is to activate the street, and you don't necessarily need 100,000 square feet to do that, as long as the portions where you want the public to mingle and congregate are accounted for. So I think maybe you hit on something when you showed the site plan. On the north end, you have that wide crosswalk that connects this project with the next development up. And maybe there's an opportunity to do something very creative with a really wide crosswalk there, and then do the same thing across the street that lines up to the entrance, getting in that direction. And maybe there's enhancements that can be done, which I don't think are big heavy lifts or big ticket items, but we could go a long way in terms of having a reason for people to go from the park and then continue the pedestrian walk northward, which I think was the intent of that internal walkway from when the whole Waypoint project was first envisioned.
So
I think you were involved in this, you probably know.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. I think creating kind of a desire by people to take that step, and maybe some curiosity, and what can we do with different streetscape elements, whether it's art or sculpture or light, or is there something we can do to get people to want to do that?
And my second point was, and I was looking at this before, I managed to find, an image from the rendering from the last approval. And I remember when I had met with I'm not sure if it was some of the folks you have on your team we do now, but when they were first looking at the project, we talked about the approved design versus what they were thinking. And to pick up on the chairman's points, I think this is kind of generic. I think it's a little bit uninspired, unfortunately. And the other part of the special permit, though, it does talk about excellence in design. So I think that's another hurdle that you'll have to meet, which I don't know if, that's a very subjective term, but I think that has to be, indicated.
Yep, that's fine. Look,
my last point.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Look, we can call this a very good start, and again, we've got open ears. My reading of that sentence was the excellence in design, which enhances the pedestrian experience and overall streetscape. So not necessarily to the entire architecture, but we want to get to that standard anyway. I'll also point out that you have the Harbor Loop Trail, which cuts through the park, and this could be an offshoot of that as well.
Okay. And my last point related to the workforce housing is, while if you do the 80% SMI, you do have to pay the 1% fee, keep in mind you also get a reduction down to 1 parking space per unit, and also a reduction in the rec space required, which are also significant cost savings to factor into that. Or you can simply just do the 60% SMI and not have to factor in that 1% fee.
Yeah, understood. There is give and take in that new regulation.
Other questions from the commissioners? All right, if not, I thank you for the presentation, and I would agree with you. This is a good start. I think we have a little way to go, but it is a good start.
Great.
And we look forward to working with you and moving a final project forward.
Excellent.
Steve, next steps, review by our architects.
Yeah, we're working on that with him now. We have to find a schedule because, as you know, he's busy with North 7.
Right.
He's also just started working on the Wall Street Place review, and he has this one on his plate now too. So I'll circle back with him tomorrow and see if we can iron out a schedule to keep everybody happy and moving and get the processes going.
Sounds good.
If workload is a barrier for this particular reviewer, are there other options or?
Yeah, let me see what he says first.
Yeah, sure.
That you know, we do have a fallback if it looks like it's going to be cumbersome, but I know the Wall Street Place one has to go to has a regulation amendment proposed with it, so maybe that gets a little bit of a longer timeline. But if he can turn that around in a few weeks, I think we can accommodate everybody.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Well, Mr. Flaherty, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
Okay, we have some of our own business to conduct. Beginning with status report on the East Norwalk TOD.
Sure, and I think it was last week, I'm losing track of time now, but the proposed amendment to the citywide plan as well as the TOD plan was approved by Common Council last week. They do have a recommendation that I'm forgetting the exact phraseology, but they want to see within the final zoning package that the green amenities are not so much amenities as they are requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to take a look at your agendas moving forward to see, you know, how busy they are. Maybe we can start parsing through the zoning regulations themselves. I did also tell them, the council, that I would report back to the planning committee as the process moved forward to review the zoning amendments with them. That's really outside of their approval process, but I think it's important to loop them in because they are very interested in the process, and there was a lot of public concern expressed about this. So I've talked to the consultant about some ideas. We had some preliminary conversations about it. And the final step in the overall approval process is the Planning Commission has to hold their adoption hearing, which is going to occur next Tuesday, which I think is the 6th. So they'll hopefully formalize that next Tuesday night. The consultant, Stantec, who did the POCD, has actually said they'll do our minor edits for free, so I was happy about that. I didn't have to find money for that. And then we'll start talking about the zoning and implementing the plan.
Okay. The industrial zone study, where does that stand?
Going back and forth with the consultant team and Sabrina Church from Economic Development now on trying to set up and who to talk to from an interview standpoint from the business community, because there's a wide, when they do research and pull up business owners, they get a really broad category. So we're trying to get, who they should talk to. And I might plan to circle that back to the committee to get their input before they actually go ahead and reach out to those folks. And they plan on having a meeting with you guys, or I should say the committee, in 3 to 4 weeks, I think is the next target.
Okay. I thought Sabrina worked for the redevelopment agency. Am I wrong about that?
No, she's been with the city now for over a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Approval of the minutes, September 16th.
Oh.
Move to
Okay, motion by Nick, second by Frank. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. I don't think we needed a roll call. Michael, report of the nominating committee?
The nominating committee met. I believe we met on Tuesday, and we're going to have another meeting before the next meeting for this month to formalize, I guess, who we're going to nominate for officers.
Okay, fair enough. Steve, comments of the director?
Yeah, you will get, hopefully tomorrow, an email from, it's going to come through and say it's Bonfire, and that's going to come from the purchasing department. And that is related to the zoning regulations, RFP, and the responses we received back. There were 4 responses in total. One of them disqualified themselves because for some reason they didn't submit all the materials electronically. So we have three submittals in total. One is a local firm from New York, and two are from out of state I haven't worked with before that look like pretty promising consultants. I haven't seen the actual responses, but I went on their websites and saw some of the other places where they've done work. So I was pretty interested that we were able to get them. I don't know what they put in for bids in terms of the cost yet, but I'll see that when you guys see it as well.
Steve, as an older person, will we be able to get hard copies?
That was one of the questions that Sharon asked me to ask you tonight, was how many people want hard copies versus just doing it through the software. The software is pretty interesting because you can, I see that. The software is pretty interesting because you can grade them right on there with the different criteria. So I just need a raise of hands for who wants
if you want a hard copy, just raise your hand. I'm it.
There are parts of it I assume that we could print if we needed to read it. You know, if we needed to have it separate. You know, so we all have a printer and we probably don't need all of it printed. I don't know.
So we already have the hard copies. So they submitted the hard copies. It's just a matter of if you want them, we'll get them delivered to you.
Oh, I see.
I did not know they made paper as big as the plans that we got for the Pinnacle.
Oh my God, that was
Oh, yeah,
I kept opening it and opening it and opening it and opening it. It's like my entire bed. I'm like, okay, cool.
Maybe they'll Tyvek the building afterwards.
Unfortunately, there were very few elevations that they gave us.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen more and more detail.
They've since brought in revisions, so you might be getting those soon too.
Yeah.
I have a question as it relates, and I'm not sure if this is a zoning issue, and that's why I stayed quiet tonight. You know, our town has been in an extreme drought, and we keep building and building and building and adding so many residential units that are big consumers of water. Does zoning have the ability to start asking what their water conservation looks like, or you know, start challenging the developers on, you know, have you done any analysis about the reservoir usage and what that would be to your plant? Do we have any authority to ask those questions?
I think we can, that's not an unreasonable question, number one, to ask. Number two, these new developments are not putting, there was an article in the Hour last week. They don't appear to be putting any stress on water. The problem is we're in a drought, not that we're using too much water. And this goes back to something that happened last night. Michael and Steve and I were invited to a conversation with the redevelopment agency regarding their strategic plan. And Brian Bedoli, the executive director of the redevelopment agency, gave us a presentation to give us some insight into what they're doing and why they're doing it at the moment. And one of the things that became clear is the redevelopment agency on a lot of issues, particularly, by the way, on all the apartments that have been built, have an enormous amount of information which I think ought to be shared with this commission because it puts what's going on into perspective. And I think we all need to hear that. I had suggested maybe we do that in relation to the conversations we'll have regarding the redo of our regulations, but maybe it ought to be something we do separately. And the executive committee and I will be discussing this, I think, with Steve as we go forward, because there's a lot of important information that we need to have, and that frankly needs to be shared with the entire community. But with regard to your specific concern, I don't see any reason why you can't ask the question. Steve,
I would
I'm
love to
sorry
get that
we-
information because it's not just water, even our schools. I mean, there's been several times in since I've been on this commission where we're building or modifying schools, and the number one thing is we're stretching. That's why we need a big builder and add on. So with more people, that's just more capacity and more stretching, and it just maybe, I don't know. We've been
Well,
seeing
Frank,
a lot of residential without commercial.
again, this is another one of the issues that was discussed. I mean, you saw all of the detail that North 7 put together on the number of school children. The redevelopment agency has similar numbers that can be shared with us. I think it's a legitimate question to ask, but I think it would be even more helpful for us to be better educated on these issues ourselves.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Steve, we brought all of this up. I don't know if you had finished your comments.
Well, I just want to confirm, only Lou for hard copies, right? Okay, going once, going twice. Second,
Ask the other commissioners who are not here tonight.
Yep,
with an
I'll
email.
ask them. And the second thing following up on that, we'll either have to do one of two things, have a special meeting to meet with Sharon to go over the submittals, at which point we'll, have to set up interviews, which will be the second phase. I'm guessing if there's 3 firms, it probably is just as easy to interview all 3 of them.
Right.
So I'll talk to Sharon about that. So we'll either have to do a special meeting to do that, or maybe, I'm not sure. We may have to do a special meeting.
Okay. And I had one thing to report. Week and a half ago, I had an email from Stephanie saying that because she's running for public office, should she resign? Should she take a leave of absence? Because her schedule is so busy that she's not sure that she can do the necessary research and then come to these meetings. And my response, I said a number of things. I said, number one, this is time limited. It's going to go on for another month. So we're talking about probably 2-3 meetings at the most. I didn't see any reason why she needed to take any action whatsoever. That we have a good attendance record on the commission, and for a couple of more meetings we can manage without her voice. Number 2, we've had at least 2 instances. One with Richard with his knee replacement, one with Nate with his hip replacement, when they missed 5, 6, 7 weeks of meetings due to medical reasons. And this has nothing to do with what position she's running for or what party she's a member of. So I simply said she really shouldn't worry about this. And once she's elected, I presume she will resign. If she's not elected, she'll stay on the commission. So I told her I would mention this to you, get your comments, but I already told her that we weren't going to take any formal action, that I didn't believe it was necessary. I don't think I overstepped my authority in doing that.
I think everyone agrees
that's it,
that
unless
he brings
well,
a
I'm sorry.
lot to the table.
She certainly does.
Yes.
And if she's elected, we're already down one commissioner, I believe. And that would put us down 2. and one who's particularly talented. Anybody else want to comment? Not on anything before we sign off? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Looks like Nick has made the motion and Galen has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Jeanette?